that day, the day of the heart attack, after my lunch, I was supposed to phone them at about 2 and accept the job. Well, at 1:00, I was lying in a hospital bed.
Hello and welcome to Self Talk. I'm Rachel Astarte. Today I have the great pleasure of interviewing Adrienne White, who is a speaker, coach, and instructor of leadership and change, and how it impacts our daily lives. Welcome, Adrienne.
Thank you so much, Rachel. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, good to have you. So I know you have so much to share, and I want you to just launch in. So please tell us a little bit about leadership and change and the brain and how you got into doing all this.
Sure. Well, thanks for that. I typically, when I'm teaching or advising, coaching, it is focused on leadership, on self-awareness, and change is a big one. And I always embed neuroscience, and that's my focus. My teaching gigs went sideways from COVID, as happened with a lot of people.
Sure.
And it gave me a perfect opportunity to do a 180 and work on a passion project, something that's been really important to me. And that is letting people, not just women, letting people know about the signs of an early heart attack. Because most people know them from what we see on TV and movies. Mm-hmm. And it's not that they're wrong, but they do not represent the majority of what women experience, and many men too. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I had my own heart adventure in late 2017. I had what I call my happy heart attack. I was out for lunch with a friend. I'll tell you more about that if you want to know.
I do.
Okay. Well, I'll finish this bit and then we can come back.
Yeah, for sure.
So I was out for lunch with a friend and ended up going to the hospital, had a heart attack. They put in stents and then said, you should really come back in 5 weeks and have open heart surgery, quadruple bypass. And up until this point, no symptoms, no test results that were alarming. So anyway, when I was recovering, I heard the statistic that 53% of women are misdiagnosed when it comes to heart attack. And I thought, how does that happen? And then more recently, I saw that the I think they may have wanted to get rid of the misdiagnosed word. I think. But anyway, most recently, I saw that 78%, early heart attack signs are missed in 78% of women.
Wow.
Like I can see missing that I have spinach in my teeth, but I do not understand how you miss heart attack symptoms. And turns out there are a lot of reasons for this. There are medical reasons for it. There are systemic, social reasons for it. And there are reasons about how we are as women that can really get in the way too. So I'm on a mission. I'm on a mission to tell as many women as possible. My goal is 10,000 people before the end of February. And that's Heart Month. And that's just the beginning.
Wow. And this is a great platform to do that as well. So I'm extra happy that you're here. Would you, and I'm going to ask the question I think everybody wants to know, which is, what are some of the symptoms so that we know?
Yeah, sure. Well, so I was out for lunch, as I mentioned, and I took a sip of water and I instantly felt sick. Instantly. So I thought, wow, I don't think you can get the flu in a nanosecond, but that's what it felt like.
What kind of sick? What do you mean when you say sick?
Nauseous.
Okay.
Like sick to my stomach, like flu-y.
Okay.
And it literally came on so quickly.
Wow.
And I thought, that's just weird. And my friend was in the ladies' room when that happened. She came back and she said, why don't we get a cup of tea? And I'm half British, so I knew that tea would fix everything. And it did. And then I felt fine. And shortly thereafter, we'd ordered lunch. And I was a wild girl and I had gluten and dairy. which I don't usually react to, but I thought, oh, it looks yummy. So I had that. Well, about a third of the way through lunch, I started to feel sick again, that nauseated feeling. And I thought that doesn't make any sense because I never react, maybe because I haven't been eating it. So the reason I'm telling you all this is because in my head, I was trying to explain away everything by reason and logic, as we do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then I noticed my arms were really weak, like tired.
Huh.
You know, when you're putting in a light bulb overhead and you're working it, and your arms get really just sore.
Uh-huh.
It was like that, just
Wow.
unexplainably weak. And I hadn't been putting in any light bulbs. And then I noticed I had a little bit of pressure in my neck. And none of these were big deals, Rachel. None of them at all. You know, they were just inconveniences.
Mm-hmm.
And so my friend said, is something up? You're not your usual responsive self. What's going on? So I told her. And as I was telling her, you know, the nauseous, a little bit of pressure in my chest, a little bit of pressure in my neck. Mm-hmm. My arms are weak and I'm tired. And I'm finding it, I run out of breath. Like I'm running out of breath. It makes it harder to talk. And those are all weird symptoms in my book. And I said, you know what? I just don't feel right. Well, in that minute, my mom's words echoed through my head, which for some people, that's a really bad thing. For me, it's a really good thing.
Okay.
Because when she was 50, she had a heart attack. And he described these intermittent, non-event kind of symptoms. Here's the truth. If I'd been home alone, I would have just gone to bed. I would have just had to lie down. And I had 100% blockage.
Wow.
So that would have been a problem. So I really feel privileged to be here.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm sharing the story. So are those heart attack symptoms that you were expecting?
No, I have to say I think we all have been taught about the pain in the left arm and maybe the shortness of breath. I think I might have heard something about nausea, but I can't really say that was one of the top things that I ever learned about the symptoms of a heart attack. So at that point, did you realize something was wrong and go to the emergency room, or what happened?
Well, I knew that I should get checked out at the very least.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was going to give my friend a ride back to her vehicle and then drive myself to the little community hospital nearby. And as we were going to the car, I said, you know what? I need you to give me a ride because I'm feeling a little too weak to do this safely. So she did. And we got to the emergency room and it's all very calm, and sat down and told them why I was there. But they're looking at me and it's clear that I'm fine. And so we went back into the waiting area. We waited a little bit. Eventually they took me in and they hooked me up to an EKG. And I was lying there all wired up and squirming a lot when I'd have that icky feeling that I told you about. And the nurse would say, are you in pain? Like, no, no pain. I said, I feel icky, but I don't feel any pain at all. But you know, that's another example. And let's talk about this at some point before I go. That's what they're looking for. They're looking for the typical male heart clasping pain down the arm. And I had no pain. And so she kept checking in. I said, you know, I don't feel well, but it'll pass. She said, what do you mean it'll pass? I said, well, it has been. And so she kept checking in and asking if I need painkillers. I was like, no, until the icky feeling didn't pass. And I said, you know what? I felt uncomfortable long enough. Let's call it pain. It wasn't, but so she gave me something. And then the doctor came over and he said, Miss White, it appears you're having a heart attack.
Wow.
And I said, no, I'm so sorry. I've been squirming so much. I think I've messed up your wires. And he said, no, you're having a heart attack. It's like, oh, okay. And thus the adventure began.
Wow. So, and I think this is also something, medically that I hope you will share with us. When we hear having a heart attack, sometimes it can come across as a brief event, right? Something that just, my heart seizes up and I get some help and then I'm either better or I'm not. But this sounds like it was going on for some time for you.
The pre-symptoms absolutely were.
Okay.
I was in emergency, which I say, it's a tiny little community hospital. They had to ship me to another hospital that deals with heart attacks. But, and they were wonderful. But it was the preamble to it was uneventful, but those are the signs, right? And it's intermittent and you can't explain it. Like there's no reason for it. But individually, they're the kind of thing that we usually brush off. Like, I don't know what kind of messages you've heard, but a lot of people have heard things like, soldier on, power through, don't be a princess, grow a pair,
Right.
And so it's just it's a case of listening.
So did you know that, besides your genetic history with your mother having had a heart attack, were you anticipating that this might happen to you?
No. I'm not, Rachel, I'm not a believer in genetics in that.
Okay.
It's certain. It's not certain.
No, it isn't. You're right.
And so no, it was not in the periphery of my reality, at all. I just went about my life. And if I can get boring for just a quick sec, my CRP, my C-reactive protein in my blood work was elevated, not high, elevated.
Okay.
My blood pressure was elevated, not high enough for medication, just elevated. And my bad cholesterol was elevated. Again, nothing high enough to warrant medication. They were all elevated. And I think when, if you have heart disease in your family, and I do, oh my goodness, it's like I won the genetic lottery. And so if you have it in your family, I would say once you pass 45, start having a conversation, just a quick one with your doctors, because they have a lot of patients and they can't remember every little thing,
True.
So it's worth saying just once a year, hey, let's have a quick talk about my heart, because I've got family history. Let's check out a few things, and just to be proactive.
Yeah. Yeah. What about stress?
Yeah. Sorry. Well, just to put this in context.
Yes.
I through a series of frustrating and unfortunate events, I was in a position where I had 29 days before I was going to be homeless. And I'd already lined up some places to couch surf just until I was able to get things back on track. And anyway, I found a job. I was pretty sure that physically I couldn't do it, but I was desperate. I wanted to live in the lovely place that I was living. And so that day, the day of the heart attack, after my lunch, I was supposed to phone them at about 2 and accept the job. Well, at 1:00, I was lying in a hospital bed. So I texted them and I said, I'm in a really bad cell zone. May I call you on Monday? And they said, sure. And of course, when I called them on Monday, they already knew about the heart attack by that point. So, but yeah, so you could say, yes, stress was part of it. Yes. But, I've had some major stress in my life. So even that, while definitely stressful, wasn't what you'd normally look at and think, wow, yeah, no wonder this topped it all off.
Yeah. and stress is cumulative too. I mean, over time. And so I know you give talks on heart attacks and educating women, but you don't necessarily focus on nutrition or exercise, and you want people to really to hear this story. So how does that work? When you talk about heart attacks in women in particular?
Yeah. Well, what I found is most of us don't want to hear. We don't want to know because it can't happen to us. We don't have time for this shit.
Mm-hmm.
No. And so from the outset, I knew that I needed to have a slightly different approach. And so I do. And it's the 5 personal strengths that can ruin your life if you're not paying attention. So I framed it in that because the truth is, a lot of the reasons why early heart attack signs are missed are those personal strengths that we wear as badges of honor that get a little out of control.
Such as,
there are so many. So let's look at responsibility for a sec.
Okay.
Most of us grow up, many of us, I shouldn't say many of us grow up and we're responsible for something or someone. Few of us grow up understanding that we are the best friend to ourselves that we will ever have.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that we are deeply deserving and worthy of love and care. And so when we get into this pattern of being responsible for something or someone else, we tend to put the responsibility for our care and nurturing out there. Right? And I'm sure you've seen this a lot.
Sure have.
where
I've been guilty of doing that myself. Yeah, I think a lot of women experience that. But yeah, please go on.
Yeah. So, and then it becomes, making other people responsible for our happiness. And that's a surefire approach to not being happy. So this weird relationship we have with responsibility doesn't serve us very often. It makes us great in the community and our parents might love us because we're always responsible for helping them feel good. But in terms of even if you have children, people say, I can't put myself first. You have to put yourself first, because if you don't have any energy left, you're not going to be a fun mom. And not that it's about fun, but it's so incredibly vital that we take extraordinary care of ourselves. That's not selfish.
Exactly right. Yeah. Yeah. Put the oxygen mask on yourself first,
Well, it's funny that you say that, because I was on the lookout for a new metaphor, because people know that and they still don't do it. When I was recovering from the heart attack, I have to tell you, not from the heart attack, from open heart surgery, I had quadruple bypass and I had 3 feet of incisions, my chest and my legs, because they have to harvest veins and ooh la la. And of course, when you've had your sternum cut, it's now held together by wire and staples. So expertly, they know what they're doing. They're brilliant at it. But you can't use your arms like we do to get up out of a chair or whatever. So stand up, sit down, go to the bathroom, cough, sneeze. You have to cross your arms in front. Anyway, when you're lying in bed right after surgery, at the next day, 7:00 in the morning, this dude shows up to weigh me. And he does this to everyone. It wasn't just me. But of course, he tries to get you out of bed. And so he has to coach you. And the one beautiful thing was he personified all the reasons I love coaching. So that was cool. But he'd start with, okay, hug thyself first. And of course I would, and he'd help me get out of bed. But about 3 or 4 days later, when the anesthesia fog started to lift,
Uh-huh.
when he said, hug thyself first, there was actually a voice in my head. It said, pay attention. This has deeper meaning. And I thought, oh, yeah. So, right. We need to hug ourselves first.
Yeah. Yeah.
So not only is that important for protecting your sternum and for healing
Sure.
from open heart surgery, it's also an important way of going forward in life.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way to put it too. It has a practical purpose for your experience, but also I love the metaphor too. Yes, hug yourself first. I love it. So, how do you feel now?
Really good. Thank you. Really very privileged. I go back and do volunteer work at the hospital ward and the cardiac ward. Not right now, but when they allow us in. And I talk to the people just about to have open heart surgery and people who are a few days out and their families. And I learn so much from them. And, for the women, because I know there are few women compared to men. And it's not because hardly any women have a heart attack. It's because hardly any women are diagnosed as having a heart attack.
Why do you think that is?
Oh, I'm glad you asked that. Oh, let's go there. Okay. So first of all, a statistic from I think the American Heart Foundation. It's an American statistic. Women are 7 times more likely to be discharged from a hospital while having a heart attack.
Wow.
I know. Floored me. Anyway, so here's why that is. Not that specific. Well, yeah, that too. 2/3 of the cardiac medical research is done on men. And it's not some horrible out to get women thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's that women have these pesky hormones that make a baseline tough.
Oh, interesting. Interesting.
Yeah. And people thought, okay, back in the day, a woman is a small man. Same. So we'll just do the research on men. They're the breadwinners after all.
Mm-hmm.
So, and even though our heart functionally is the same, there are some intricacies in it, like finer, apparently, veins and that kind of thing. They're a little bit different. But the big thing is the protocols, the tests that they use to see what's going on, they're not as effective for a lot of women. So we have medical professionals who are, good intention, doing great work, really doing a good job. And the research that they have access to is all done on men. Not all. And it's getting much, much better, obviously. And then we've got that whole society thing with TV and movies showing us what a heart attack looks like. Right. And so when you put all of that together and you couple that with women who are not advocating for themselves and not paying attention to their bodies and don't want to make a fuss, don't want to bother anybody in case they're wrong, you hit a ridiculous statistic like early heart attack signs being missed in 78% of women.
That's incredible. Yeah, you've done your research and you've lived it too. So I want to switch gears only slightly, not 180 degrees or anything, somewhere between that. This is a podcast called Self Talk. And I wonder if you might share with the listeners what the self means to you personally. What does it mean when I say, like, who is Adrienne? Who is she? What does self mean to you when you think, all right, let me discuss myself? What does that mean to you?
That's interesting. Nobody's asked me that before, Rachel. That's a great question. When I look at the words I am, I catch myself, as probably most of us do, saying, oh, I'm tired, or I'm not feeling well, or and it's like, no, I'm experiencing those things. That's not who I am. Who I am is a strong, passionate, caring, loving person who is worthy of love and has value in the world. And I promise you, I did not feel that way for most of my life.
What changed? What made you come to that very important awareness?
Well, it wasn't one thing, although I do remember one conversation with a woman in Belgium. We were all on a call, and this woman in Belgium was talking about, we were talking about the inner self, right? The way we talk to ourselves.
Yeah.
And it is a foul-mouthed, mean place in a lot of our heads, right?
Sure can be.
And so we were specifically talking about the younger self in us, because we all have one. And she said, I suddenly realized I would never talk to a child that way. Like if they were learning to walk and they kept falling over, I'd never say, get up, you little dummy.
Exactly. Yeah.
And yet, and just in that, I don't know what it was. We hear the same thing, but when we're ready, it twigs. And it struck me at that moment, holy crap. Like, I feel that, well, now when I look at my past, there are many elements of it that sucked tremendously. And that is true for so many of us, most of us, I'd say.
Yeah.
But I've come to a point now where it's like unconditional love is the core of who I am. Not in a way that I don't have boundaries. Oh my, yes, I do. But I'm still capable of unconditional love. And that doesn't mean that you're going to be in my life if you're not healthy for me, but I still love you. And I would not have discovered the depth of how that is important to me if I didn't get it from my father. Right? So I've managed to look at all those things that when I was younger, in my 20s and 30s, sometimes early 40s, that that I'd think, oh, those sucked. They were so mean. I didn't have all the advantages. And they said some awful things to me. And because they were my parents, I figured they must be right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, I forgot that as an adult, it's our job to rewrite it in a way that works for us and to look at our own values and our own principles and move forward with that.
Yeah.
So it was kind of, it grew that way.
That's a really beautiful point that you made that I want to revisit. This idea of unconditional love and boundaries, that it is very possible to create, or as I say with my patients, boundaries, not walls, right? So you don't want to shut people out. You have to with toxic people, but you can still do it with compassion, and you can still do it with universal love or agape for that person or people, while protecting yourself. You leave the door open a crack because at any point someone can change, but you do have to protect yourself. And I love that what you said about, being able to have strong boundaries while still having love, unconditional love. That's really beautifully put. Thank you for saying that. So you have launched a live virtual talk.
Yes.
Called A Little Heart to Heart. Very lovely name. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yes, happily. And it's interesting because I'm thinking of quite seriously of shifting the name to 5 personal strengths that can ruin your life and what to do about it. Because even a little heart to heart is lovely and warm and inviting, but not necessarily enough to get people off the couch to their computer. So, but anyway, it's just over an hour. It has stories of some of the women I've met in the hospital and some of my own stories. But truly is focused on those behaviors like responsibility, but for others, in addition, that that can really work to our advantage or our extreme disadvantage. By the end of it, women do know about the symptoms that we've just talked about for sure, so that they can recognize them for other people, because we're not always good at recognizing them for ourselves. So by coming, people have an opportunity to really understand so that they can help other people. Maybe themselves one day, but definitely other people. And at the same time, have a different perspective on these personal strengths that we so often look as a badge of honor in a more holistic way, to make sure that they work for us, not against us.
Yeah, beautiful. And I like that too. I almost was going to say it's reversed when you realize it for yourself and you get that really embodied. What's holding me back from stepping into my highest self, or stepping into true self-care, not just emotional and spiritual, but in this case as well, physical self-care. Once you've got that embodied, then it's much easier to recognize, especially if you're friends with someone. I'm thinking about the friend you were having lunch with. If she had listened to your talk, would she have been able to notice some of those symptoms for you, not just the physical ones, but I know you, Adrienne, and you're a very, very strong woman, and maybe there's something going on. And, I wonder if that might have worked in for your benefit, as well. So I love how we're all helping each other out with this.
Exactly. She actually thought I was having indigestion. And I found out later that the restaurant manager, she thought I was having a heart attack, and she said that to my friend.
Wow.
So I think my friend paid closer attention.
Interesting. Wow, that's interesting. So as we close, is there anything you'd like to share, any events coming up, or publications, or anything you'd like to share with the listeners that they might be able to look forward to?
Sure. I'll tell you what, if I may, may I give you the URL for?
Oh, absolutely. That was the next question. How can people find you? Yeah, throw it all in there. Let's go crazy.
So I'm Adrienne at leaderslanding.com. But the heart stuff is at wholeheart.mailchimpsites.com. Okay. wholeheart.mailchimpsites.com. And you'll see there, if you've got a group that have speakers in, I can come in and do that. I also have private public events that people can sign up for. And it's all focused on what we've just been talking about.
Beautiful. And I'm going to make sure that we have these URLs listed when I launch this episode, so people will be able to see it right there. And that's wonderful. So I'm glad that we will be able to follow you. This has been a great pleasure. I absolutely have enjoyed speaking with you today. And thank you so much for all of the education.
My pleasure, Rachel. Thanks for having me on here. And if every woman who hears this, and every man too, tells 15 people, and it snowballs, we can create a groundswell of people who know what to watch out for, so that they can live with their whole heart and enjoy more of their life.
Beautiful. Thank you.